We worked it up. They are. I know a lot of people are 70. That is my plan. I worked at the hospital for 40 years. I'm pretty familiar with the pre-imaging. And then he's talking to that chairless right now. Oh, who's this guy? He's he is a call.
Yeah, I got one of those. Yes, sir.
He's got enough long money to give him.
And I give you they're already in. That's what he said, the board starts for it. See, we're going to need the bail bond money. Yeah, we're going to need the bail bond I'll help you. We're going to make money. Yeah, we need somebody to go home and feed the cats. Where were they? That's what they said. He's like, what a mama called.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't even think about it. I should have brought these. They might be hid though. I know. You gotta get yes, ma'am. You are so good. I'll give it back to you. Well, it's good to have one. Oh, dang it. Now, see, my husband just stops it because he's like, you take care of this, you take care of this. Well, that's glad to be in bed, so he's like, I need you to go to this meeting. Thank you.
It's your tape recorder.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Well, we won't hold that much. You want me to hold
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that was the first thing out there when we got there. The doors, but we knew the security was in there.
I swear to God, I am. You should stop right in the middle. I should. Like a couple of toddlers.
Oh,
Do you want to take this one?
Thank you.
Where swing goes.
So this is what you said?
I was the one that you start laughing.
the sound guy was the first guy. He was here at 25.
Okay. We'll call this meeting to order at whatever time it is, 6:34. And if you'd all stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to call the roll call for the Coles County Planning and Development Committee. Clayton, Cox, Dowdy, Friesland, and I'm Mike Watts, chair. And at this time, I'm going to introduce Andrew Kite, who's going to do the application project overview.
Okay, my name is Andy Kite. I'm the attorney that represents Coles County. In terms of identifying the application, the applicant is Coles Wind LLC, which is an indirect subsidiary of Apex Clean Energy Holdings. The applicant seeks to construct and operate a commercial wind energy facility comprising of up to 51 wind turbines, substation, including collector lines, access roads, LiDAR tower, aircraft detection lighting system tower, operation and maintenance building, laydown yard, and supporting facilities in the northern portion of Coles County. The application is on file with the Coles County Regional Planning Commission and posted on the Coles County website for people who wish to view it. The notice of hearing was published in the Oakland Independent on February 27th, 2025, and the statutory mailings were provided to adjacent landowners and mailed on February 21st, 2025. The applicant has paid the necessary fees, and the application has been filed.
Thank you. Welcome to this meeting tonight of the Coles County Planning and Development Committee. As chair, I want to welcome you to what's likely to be several meetings of a public hearing regarding the application for a wind energy conversion system special use permit. The applicant, oh, you already said that, sorry. For the record, this hearing is taking place at the Coles County Courthouse, and the purpose of this hearing is for the Coles County Planning and Development Committee to hear evidence, make findings of facts, and then make a recommendation on the proposed project to the Coles County Board, which will have final say on the proposed project. I want to acknowledge that we've been guided through the license application process by the Director of the Coles County Regional Planning and Development, Kelly Lockhart, with assistance of the County State's Attorney's Office headed by State's Attorney Jesse Danley. And retired Judge Scott Keynes will serve as the public hearing facilitator. In that role, he will assist in resolving evidentiary issues, including the admission of evidence and ruling on any objections to questions from attorneys for the parties. And just for your information, our plan is to try to recess or adjourn around 9 o'clock. And if we have to recess, then we'll set the next meeting date before we do that. So at this time, I turn the meeting over to Mr. Keynes.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Just want to clarify one thing from Mr. Watt's information on me. I was never a judge, and that's okay. We've only met just briefly once before today. I am retired, however, although it seems like I'm working more and more. My name is Scott Keynes. I've been a lawyer in practice in Springfield for 33 years, and my primary area of practice is conducting wind and solar energy hearings throughout downstate Illinois. For instance, earlier today I conducted 2 solar hearings in Vermilion County up in Danville. Tomorrow is Pontiac in Livingston County. And so I'm around the state, and my job is to conduct these types of hearings. And when you get a group of lawyers together, like me, Mr. Kite, who represents the county, there's a handful of lawyers at this table representing Apex and its subsidiary, Coles Wind. We're going to come up with rules, and we've had rules that have been approved by the Planning and Development Committee, and I'm going to go through the rules. If I go too fast and you don't catch something, they are on the Coles County website homepage about halfway down. So if you're confused about anything, that's where you can find the rules. All right, we're going to start this evening with evidence from the applicant, Coles Wind LLC. The applicant shall present testimony and evidence. Each of the applicant's witnesses shall remain present for questioning by the Planning and Development Committee and others until such time as the witness is excused by me. Members of the Planning and Development Committee shall have the opportunity to question the applicant's witnesses providing testimony. The Planning and Development Committee's members may ask questions at any time during the hearing. But we do have a procedure and an order in which we're going to go so that everyone who wants to will have a chance to ask questions of witnesses. And that's any witness, whether it's provided by the applicant or individuals who wish to testify in this hearing. They would also be open for questioning. All persons present shall have the opportunity to question applicants, witnesses, and evidence in the following order. First, the Coles County Planning and Development Committee members. Second, units of local government, including school districts. Third, interested parties represented by licensed attorneys. Then other interested parties, including members of the public. Then there will be opportunity for questions by Coles County staff and consultants, and there will be follow-up questions from the committee members. As I always say, the committee members have the first questions, and they have the last bite at the apple on questions of a witness, because it is this particular committee that will be making a recommendation on this project to the full Coles County Board. After the applicant presents its evidence, then there will be evidence from persons in favor of the application. That's anyone in here who is in support of the application for the project. They will be subject to questioning in the same order that I just read previously. Then we will have evidence from licensed attorneys representing interested parties in opposition to the application. Just for my information and for the record, are there any licensed attorneys in the room representing an individual or group of individuals in support of or in opposition to this application? Then to expedite things, I'll just skip over asking that question each time, since there are no lawyers who represent folks here. Then after the questions from attorneys, there will be, as I said, questions from the public and on down the line. There will be evidence from persons opposed to the application, then evidence from persons who are neutral on the application, and again, they can be questioned by the Planning and Development Committee and so on. Then there will be the identification and reading of any written comments regarding the application. Folks, because this hearing is going to go several nights, you may not be able to be here all of the nights of the hearing, and that's understandable. I understand everybody has their own lives, their kids' sporting events or their grandkids' events, whatever it is. If you're not able to be here, and quite honestly, I don't know that we're going to get to public testimony until perhaps the third night or the fourth night if we go that long. But if you're not available, you may submit a written comment and send it to Mr. Lockhart. And is your email address on the county's website?
It is under Coles County Regional Planning.
Okay. All right. Did you hear that, everybody? Coles County Regional Planning. This is Mr. Kelly Lockhart, Planning Administrator. And you can send any written comments by email to him, or you can send a letter to Mr. Lockhart, and then any written comments will be presented and read into the record at a future hearing. All right, so there will be written comments, then we'll take evidence from Coles County staff and consultants. There will be an opportunity for oral public comment as well. And again, for your information, we do not have a sign-in sheet or sheets, simply because I have found in my experience in doing a number of these hearings that if you were to sign your name tonight, by the time we get to you, you may not be here. And so when it's time for witness testimony, I'm just going to look for a show of hands who wants to testify, and the same for public comment. When it's time for public comment, I'll just look for a show of hands and call folks up in order. But I want to assure you that everyone who wants to testify, everyone who wants to make public comment, will have the opportunity to do so. This is a public hearing, and the public needs to be heard. Then the county will be able to recall any witness that has testified for further information or evidence at any time. Then after all of the evidence is in, there will be closing statements by counsel for the applicant, and then closing statement by any objectors. But the introduction of new evidence in closing statements is prohibited. In other words, when it's your time to testify, that's when you testify. When it's time to give a closing statement, then you just summarize your feelings on the project. Then there will be the opportunity for rebuttal statement by counsel for the applicant. We'll close the evidence, and then the committee will deliberate and vote on the project. And that vote is it's not a final vote, it's a recommendation to the full Coles County Board, which has the responsibility for ultimately voting on this project. All right, a few other hearing rules. 1, these provisions shall govern procedures of the public hearings before the Coles County Planning and Development Committee concerning wind energy conversion systems. The chair and the Planning and Development Committee may modify these procedures in their reasonable discretion. 2, a court reporter shall be present at every hearing and voting meeting in order to provide a transcript of the proceedings. Transcripts will be prepared by the court reporter and sent to the Planning and Development Committee. Costs for all transcripts of hearings or voting meetings before the Planning and Development Committee shall be borne by the applicant, and the cost of the transcript shall be paid directly to the court reporting service. 3, the hearing shall occur on the date and time set forth in the published notice. All necessary additional hearing dates shall be scheduled at the discretion of the Planning and Development Committee, and I anticipate that the next scheduled session of this public hearing will be discussed around 9 o'clock this evening, and so we'll be able to let you know tonight when future sessions of this public hearing will take place. 4, the chair or acting chair, including hearing moderator, shall preside at the public hearings of the Planning and Development Committee. The chair shall have the authority to control the hearing proceedings, may determine time limits, schedule the appearance of witnesses, and require their appearance on dates set forth in the scheduling order, restrict witnesses from testifying for failure to appear on the date scheduled for that witness's testimony, adopt reasonable limits upon the questioning of witnesses by the applicant and interested parties, and take other action deemed reasonably necessary by the chair in order to conduct the hearing in an orderly, efficient, and professional manner. Number 5, the hearing before the Planning and Development Committee shall not be governed by, and the Planning and Development Committee shall not be bound by, the strict rules of evidence. The Planning and Development Committee may exclude irrelevant material and unduly repetitious testimony and any other testimony or evidence that in the discretion of the chair or myself is not pertinent to these proceedings. Tactics designed to delay the proceedings are not permitted. Rule number 6, and we're getting close, there's 12, so just bear with me. Number 6, all witnesses shall testify under oath. 7, at the discretion of the chairperson, Planning and Development Committee members shall be permitted to question witnesses at any time during the hearing, and Planning and Development Committee members may request that additional information or evidence be presented to them during the hearing. 8, public hearings may be held by less than a quorum of the Planning and Development Committee. Once there's a quorum on the first night, that's good enough according to the rules. Number 9, the discretion to admit testimony, documents, or other evidence lies solely within my discretion. The determination of qualifications of an expert witness shall be within my discretion. Expert witnesses must adequately demonstrate their qualifications prior to rendering an opinion on a matter. All studies relied upon in an expert's written submissions must be disclosed. Number 10, the Planning and Development Committee shall transmit its findings and recommendations to the County Board in written form. Number 11, audience members, this is a good one, must be seated and quiet. But we can't all be seated because there's just not enough room. So we'll waive that provision. But we do appreciate if you are quiet because our court reporter, Mrs. Atkinson, has to take down everything that is said. Otherwise, she writes unintelligible in the transcript, and that's not helpful to anyone. All right, loitering in the hearing room is prohibited, but again, y'all aren't loitering back there. You're standing and being very patient. We appreciate that. But I do have to say that any person who is unruly, disrupts, or attempts to disrupt the hearing or otherwise engages in inappropriate behavior will be expelled. Excessive applause, jeering, or other commotion shall be considered disruptive. Applause and cheering is for Jerry Springer or whatever those shows are. It's not for this public hearing. And finally, number 12, time limits. Upon demonstration of expertise within a relevant field, expert witnesses, in this case, will be allowed unlimited time to testify. If you are not an expert, a non-expert witness who is a resident of Coles County shall have up to 60 minutes to present their testimony. I don't know if anybody has ever talked for 60 minutes straight, but if you are, more power to you. If you're a Coles County resident, you have up to 60 minutes to testify. And finally, non-expert witnesses who are non-residents of Coles County shall have 15 minutes to present their testimony. Well, we made it through the rules in 15 minutes. Ms. Antonioli, as lead... Yes, sir.
My name is Rich Shook. I'm on the county board.
Yes, sir.
District Mattoon. When can the county board ask these folks questions?
Okay, you are a units of local government. You'll be right after members of the committee. Oh, absolutely. You'll get the chance to ask questions. All right. Before we go to Ms. Antonioli, I want to introduce some of the people here. You've met the chairman, Mr. Watts, of the Planning and Development Committee. Also with us is Mr. Darrell Cox. He's in the back row. There he is. He's a member of this committee. Mr. Mike Clayton, seated also in the back row, is a member of the committee. Mr. Jeremy Dowdy is also a member of this committee. And Mr. Tad Friesland. There you go. So those are the 5 gentlemen who are members of this committee. The remaining persons in the jury box are either county board members who are interested in being here in this project. We also have, is it Ms. McCullough from the Regional Planning Office, and also in the jury box is our representatives from Channel 3 WCIA in Champaign. They're a reporter and photographer, and so we appreciate them being here. All right. Seated at the tables in front of me, Mr. Andy Kite, you've already heard from him. Behind him is his co-counsel, Mr. Frank Iruli. And Robert, I never can remember your last name, brother. Robert Tuck is a paralegal with Mr. Iruli and Mr. Kite's law firm. Now, seated at the table directly in front of me, lead counsel in the middle is Ms. Amy Antonioli. To her right, that would be to your right, is Ms. Sarah Lodi. They are with the law firm of Arendt Fox Schiff in Chicago. To Ms. Antonioli's left is Mr. Jay Hess. He is an attorney in-house with Apex. Is that correct? All right. And next to Mr. Hess, gentleman in the blue jacket, is Mr. Alan Moore. He is the project developer. Would that be fair to say, Mr. Moore? And Bree Anderson. And Bree, I forget your title.
Senior Director of Project Permitting.
Senior Director of Project Permitting. Okay. Now we've got all of that done. Ms. Antonioli, do you have any preliminary matters before you call your first witness?
I do, thank you. And you did half my job for me already by introducing so many of my teammates and members. So my name is Amy Antonioli. I'm with Arendt Fox Schiff. I'm here with Sarah Lodi to my right, as you mentioned, Gerald Hess, and Athena Shapiro, who are counsel for Apex Clean Energy. And we're here on behalf of Coles Wind in support of the petition for a special use permit. We've worked really hard tonight to prepare an informative and very efficient presentation for your review. The members of the Coles Wind team will present evidence on how the application meets all the requirements of the Coles County Wind Ordinance, and then also walk you through the construction process so you have an understanding of how that happens. We also have subject matter experts here tonight who authored the studies and the reports and prepared all the documents that are attached to the application. They are available to answer any questions, and we reserve the right to call such witnesses as necessary, and they will present their information when they stand up to present. So it is the Illinois Counties Code that authorizes the county to zone and also to approve special uses. A section of the code also specifically sets forth standards for commercial wind energy projects, and I'll refer to that from time to time as the siting law. It says that a county shall approve an application for siting or special use if it complies with the provisions of the siting law and an ordinance that is adopted consistent with the siting law, as well as all conditions in applicable state and federal law. In a special use process, it's incumbent upon the applicant to present evidence to the Planning and Development Committee from which it can make a finding that the ordinance requirements have been met. And it is your job in your role as members of the Planning and Development Committee to take on the challenging task of reviewing all of the evidence, listening to all of the evidence, and making a recommendation to the full county board on whether the application meets the requirements. So Coles Wind filed an application on January 17th, 2025, and as Mr. Kite said, that is available for review on the county's website. We also have some copies, some full copies available tonight for inspection too, if anyone in the public or if anyone else wants to review it. You should have received binders with the full application that was sent along when you filed the application. There should be 12 copies available for inspection. And we've also presented you with separate smaller binders, and that has copies of the presentation that the witnesses will be speaking to tonight. So we believe once we review all of the evidence, you will find that this project meets all of the requirements of the Coles County Wind Ordinance and deserves a recommendation that you shall approve permit application. So with that, thank you. And before we begin, I do have a few housekeeping items to take care of.
All right, very good. Thank you, Ms. Antonioli. You may go ahead.
Okay, so first we'd like to move into the record a copy of the application that was filed, just to make sure that it is moved into the record as applicant's exhibit 1.
Does Mr. Kite have a copy of this?
We do.
All right, there's a motion to admit exhibit 1. Mr. Kite, do you have any objection?
I don't have an objection to group. I would say we identified as group exhibit number 1. There may be specific issues I may have an objection to. It remains to be seen as it comes up, but I don't have an objection to group exhibit number 1 being identified as the application.
Okay, we'll have it identified, but we'll take up the admission of it at the conclusion of the case.
Okay, and then we do have copies of the slide presentations that we can enter into the record. Do you prefer we do that after they speak to the slides?
Yeah, let's just take it all up at the conclusion of your case.
Okay, we can do the rest of them then.
Yep.
Mr. Hearing Officer, may I give this to Mr. Dobby?
Yes, absolutely.
Apologies.
And then with that, I'd like to call our first witness, Mr. Alan Moore.
Mr. Moore, the hot seat is right up here. You, sir, solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do. Very good. Thank you. Have a seat.
Thank you, sir.
That mic work?
It is not on. I don't think so. Can you guys hear me okay?
No.
Speak up.
Kenny, would you mind coming up here and taking care of the leash on this thing? Ms. Shapiro, that's something that's outside of your job description.
All right. How's that? Any better?
It would be helpful to move the mic stand in front.
Looking for the box and didn't see.
It could be. I mean, I can lean over. Okay. No, you're good. Sure. All right.
All right, Ms. Antonioli, you may proceed.
Okay, Alan. Mr. Moore, can you tell us a little bit about your experience at Apex, how long you've been with the company, and your role?
Yes. So my name is Alan Moore. I'm a director of development with Apex Clean Energy. Just a little bit about me before my time at Apex. I grew up in Tidewater, Virginia. I went to undergrad at the University of Virginia and graduate school at the College of Charleston in South Carolina. I spent about 15 years, a little longer than that, working in agriculture, where I ran a produce company, a grain operation, working with small family farms throughout the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast, with these farms looking to target premium markets and to diversify their farming operations. I help them with farm planning, help them with training, help them with food safety, and then the direct distribution of the products that they grew, whether it was produce, apples, or otherwise. I moved to Apex about 7 years ago, and I have developed a number of projects across the Midwest and oversee much of our portfolio of projects in Illinois, and I'm the lead developer for Coleswood.
Okay. And how long have you been with Apex?
A little over 7 years, almost 8 years this year.
And as Director of Development, have you worked on other projects in Illinois?
Yes, I have.
And about how many projects have you worked on?
I've worked on probably 15 projects or so across the state of Illinois, and then one that is almost in operations.
Okay, and are you familiar with what I referred to earlier as the siting law, the section of the county's code?
Yes,
Are you familiar with the Coles County Wind Ordinance?
I am.
Okay, thanks. I will go ahead and proceed.
Great, yeah, if we could just jump back just quickly. Thank you to the board that's here this evening. Thank you to the Planning and Development Committee. Thank you to all the members in the public who are here. It's an important conversation that we're having, and the fact that you can come on an evening like this represents a lot. As I mentioned, my name is Alan Moore. I'll be introducing our project this evening and discussing its development history, the benefits of the project for Coles County and Coles County residents. I'll be followed by my colleague Bree Anderson, who will discuss our project application and how it meets all the criteria of the Coles County Wind Ordinance. Adam Carlson is here this evening. He's a senior project manager with Apex, and he'll be building this project. And additionally, we have Goni Escali, our Director of Environmental, as well as Jason Connolly, the Director of Health and Safety. And finally, as mentioned earlier, we have Jay Hess and Adina Shapiro. All are here this evening, and all are here to answer your questions. As referenced by multiple people earlier, in addition to Apex staff, we have a number of subject matter experts here in the room, all of which have worked on this project and are here to address your concerns and answer your questions. In addition to Amy and Sarah, we have Kelly McHugh, who put together our decommissioning plan, Isaac Old, who put together our sound study, Drew Lines, who put together our property value report, Jacob Runner, who put together our shadow flicker study, and Dr. David Loomis, who put together our economic impact study. Next slide, please. You can skip over that. So I introduced myself, I introduced our team, I introduced the folks who worked on this project, but we represent more than 400 employees of Apex who live and work around the country on every aspect of these projects. Apex is an American-owned, veteran-led, U.S.-based energy company. We will develop, build, own, and operate this project. We will be a partner with Coles County for many years to come. In fact, my colleague Adam Carlson, who you'll hear later this evening, grew up in Illinois, still owns farm grounds here in Ford County, will build this project. And I'm really proud to work for a company where I can say that. Next slide, please. All of our goals and all of our work that we do with Apex are guided by our 5 core values: safety, integrity, sustainability, entrepreneurship, and professionalism. Because of these values, we strive to build long-term relationships within the communities where we work. I want to highlight a few of these initiatives that we've initiated across our entirety of our company, and I'll get into some more of the specifics for Coles County in a bit. But really, across our portfolio, I want to highlight 2. First is our community grant program. This program we started in 2017, and through this program, we issue small grants to local nonprofits and community groups that work in the communities where we operate. Since 2017, we've contributed $5.2 million to these organizations and nonprofits. And second is our conservation grant program. This program we started in 2020, and through this program, we donate $1,000 per megawatt for every project that goes into operations. So this project will contribute a little bit over $300,000. These efforts go to organizations like Grand Prairie Friends, who leverage these funds for matching donations, which often amplifies their impact in the community. So again, we started this program in 2020. We contributed $3.4 million to this program. Those dollars have been amplified to $17.8 million. So in total, this impact is $21.2 million. Next slide, please. I also really want to discuss what to expect through this process. You've heard a lot of rules so far this evening and introductions, but first and foremost on our end is transparency. We've worked hard to build relationships across Coles County. These projects take a long, long time to develop. But Coles Wind is at the right stage of development to be before the county board and the planning and development committee. We're here to show you the details of our project and our special use permit application. We're here to address the concerns and questions from the community, and we're here to hear from our supporters and the broader community. Coles Wind is designed to meet the desires of participating landowners and the county. Next slide, please. So I thought it would be helpful to give you a quick overview of our project. Coles Wind will be 311 megawatts, and I know that seems like a big number and may not really know exactly what that means. But a good comparison is how much electricity it generates. So it'll generate enough electricity to power over 100,000 homes annually. The project will be located in northern Coles County, in Morgan and 7 Hickory townships. We aim to be in operations early in 2027. We have 119 family agreements across the project. So just to unpack that a bit, we have 119 families that have chosen to participate in this project. And in this project, we will build 51 turbines. So I'll reiterate that. We will build only 51 turbines in this project. We are asking to permit 62 turbine locations because in every project, we plan for a number of spare locations. In case there is an issue with one of our primary locations that comes up in the final engineering or planning of the project, we need to be able to pivot to a different location. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, these projects take a long time to development. We started developing this project late in 2019. We often get a lot of questions about why we start development in an area for a specific project. And it's really for 3 reasons. First is the wind. And I think probably everybody in this room can attest that it's windy here in Coles County. Second is land. We look for areas with open farm ground and interested landowners. And last is transmission capacity. So we also look for places with transmission capacity on the transmission lines in the area. Coles County has both transmission lines and capacity on these lines for this project. Our team has worked hard with landowners in the community for years to develop relationships. We do this because Apex has no eminent domain authority. All of our facilities, turbines, roads, underground collection are all sited on ground that is privately owned farm ground. Every participant in the project has decided to participate in this project because they think it is the best decision for their farms and their families. In fact, we can't step on their ground without their decision to participate in the project. So it's really a collaborative effort to get to where we are today. Next slide. Our team, as I mentioned, has been active in Coles County since we started developing this project. We are active members in Coles Together, the Charleston Chamber, and other community organizations. Through the community grant program, which I mentioned earlier, we have made more than $60,000 in donations to a wide variety of community organizations across Coles County. You can see a whole list of them right there. I won't run through the whole list, but I think it's an impressive group of folks that we partnered with. We've established an endowed scholarship at Lakeland College for STEM students. We've donated $25,000 to the Eastern Illinois Food Bank and another $20,000 to the Special Olympics of Illinois. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're here to discuss the specifics of this project. This project, as I said, has 119 agreements that covers 21,500 acres. Now that seems like a lot of farmland, I get it. But we broke this number down to the 100th of an acre of impact across the 51 turbines that we will build. Each turbine, after construction, will impact 0.06 acres. The access roads going to the turbines will impact another 32.18 acres. So what does that mean? It means 35.27 acres will be impacted by this project. So that's 0.16% of the participating acres will be impacted by turbines after construction. All of this is on signed ground with input from landowners, and not only landowners, but also their tenants. Next slide, please. What I hope to drive home over these next few slides is what an opportunity Coles Wind is for Coles County. This project will bring around $275 million in direct economic benefits to the county. And I'll unpack that number in a little bit. To understand what this will look like for Coles County, let's quickly look at where things are now. And again, all of these numbers are put together by a study by Dr. David Loomis, who's here in the room this evening. And I also want to stress that this is not a unique situation to Coles County. It is one that many communities are facing, in rural agricultural communities are facing, not only in Illinois, but across the country. For fiscal year 25, the Coles County General Fund was roughly $4.6 million. One of the largest sources of county tax revenue is the Illinois Personal Property Replacement Tax. This fund has dropped significantly over the last 2 years. Coles County additionally has a declining population and an aging farming community. And again, this is not unique to Coles County. This is a problem that many communities face across the country. So with decreasing state aid and decreasing population, the county is faced with some tough decisions on what to do over the next few years, whether to cut spending or increase taxes. But what is unique to Coles County is what an opportunity Coles Wind is for the community and for the county. Next slide. So, to be clear, Coles Wind is not a silver bullet. It is but a tool in the county's tool belt. Coles Wind will bring, on average, $456,000 in tax revenue annually to Coles County. I'll unpack that a little bit more in a bit, and again, this is all from Dr. Loomis's work. That number is roughly 10% of the county's general fund, and closer to 15% over the first couple of years. And additionally, Coles Wind will make more than $5 million in direct landowner payments to participating landowners annually. So again, and this is why I love my job, right? I talked earlier about my background working with family farms, targeting premium and specialty markets to help increase the bottom line and diversify farm operations for farmers. Coles County is a farming community, hundreds of thousands of acres in production. This project will bring tremendous tax revenue and direct farm payments to landowners while keeping the ground in production and only impacting a little bit over 35 acres. Wind works with farming communities. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I want to dig in a little bit on the specifics of the tax revenue, and again, this is all found in the special use permit application for you to review if you haven't, and again, put together by Dr. Loomis. And so what Coles County will bring is over $81.2 million in property taxes to all of the taxing districts in Coles County. This averages to a little bit over $2.7 million annually. $48.6 million in this and will go to the 3 different school districts in the area. And as I mentioned, a little bit over $13 million will go in property taxes to Coles County. As you can see from this pie graph, the impact of this will have impact on many other taxing districts in the county. I just wanted to highlight those few. Next slide, please. Our project has been cited with input from landowners and their tenant farmers. This transparency is important to us. Where possible, we plan for and move facilities to better work with their farming operations. As Adam will discuss later this evening, we will repair tile for the life of the project. He'll discuss the specifics of this process, but frankly, our feeling is if we break it, we're obligated to fix it. We'll also pay crop damages for our impact in the fields, as well as compaction payments for fields that may see decreased yield over the next couple of years post-construction. As I've mentioned a couple of times this evening, and Dr. Loomis's study, included in our permit application, shows that this project will account for roughly 10% of the Coles County General Fund. Also included in our permit application is the property value study conducted by Cone Resnick. Drew Lyons is here this evening and can address specific questions, but it demonstrates that this project will have no negative impact on residential or agricultural property values. Coles Wind will create around 300 jobs during construction and around 10 long-term, well-paying jobs during operations. We have a number of folks in the room here this evening that can speak to how critical these jobs are to folks working in these trades. My colleague Bree and Kelly from Westwood will discuss the decommissioning plan and how it protects the county and Coles County residents now and into the future. The road use agreements that will be negotiated with the county and 7 Hickory and Morgan townships will protect and improve the roads in the area. As I mentioned, safety is critical to everything we do. Our team has started our collaboration with local EMA and fire districts. We've shared our emergency action plan with them for input, and this plan will continue to evolve over the life of the project. We're committed to hosting annual trainings throughout the life of the project as well. And finally, as my colleague Adam will discuss in more detail, we will use minimal water during the construction of this project and will not impact local water sources in the region, and we do not anticipate any impact on surrounding wells. Next slide, please. So that's a lot of information and a lot of numbers that I've thrown at you in the last few minutes. So I wanted to drill down on a few of those just a bit to provide a little bit more clarity. First, Coles Wind will provide $145 million in direct landowner payments. As we discussed, this project will provide $81.2 million paid across all of the Coles County taxing districts in the project area. About $1.2 million will be paid in annual salaries throughout the operations of this project and will create 9 to 10 full-time jobs. And then the salaries paid during construction will be roughly $15.5 million. So in total, when you sum all of that up, Coles Wind will have about $275 million in direct economic benefits for Coles County. Next slide, please. So in summary, Coles Wind, as a project, is a roughly $650 million economic investment by Apex Clean Energy in Coles County. It will bring in $275 million in benefits to Coles County and Coles County landowners. And these not only benefit participating landowners, but all county residents, including schools, roads, townships, fire stations, trade unions, all will receive benefits from this project. This project has significant landowner support. Again, as I mentioned, 119 agreements across 21,500 acres. All of this with just impacting a little bit over 35 acres by turbines. And all of this will be restored at the end of the life of the project. Coles Wind complies with all of the Coles County wind ordinance requirements. Thank you very much. That's all I have for this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moore. Ms. Antonioli, do you have any additional direct examination of your witness?
I do not, but I think we were distracted earlier with the microphone. We did not swear in the witnesses yet. Should we do that all together?
I just swore him
Oh,
in.
he did. Okay.
And then when each one comes up, I'll take it.
I missed that. Sorry.
That's
Thank
all right.
you.
That's all right.
No, I do not
You
have
have
any
any other-
further questions.
okay.
Can I introduce Mr. Moore as an expert in development?
Mr. Moore, how many years have you worked in the wind industry?
It'll be 8 this coming year.
All as a project developer?
Yes, sir.
What are your degrees in?
I have a degree in biology, environmental science, and a master's degree in environmental science.
Okay.
Mr. Moore, how many wind farm cases have you testified in Illinois?
Well, 2.
Are those projects similar in size to this project?
They are similar in size to this project.
And have any of those projects been built?
One of them will be in operations in roughly a month.
I don't have any objection to being qualified as an expert.
All right, I will allow it. He's qualified as an expert witness, so he came in expert witness time. All right. Just in the nick of time, Mr. Moore. All right, questions for this witness first come from members of the Planning and Development Committee. Gentlemen, any questions for Mr. Moore? Yes, Mr. Clayton.
We do, yes. Yes, he can answer specific questions.
And then I have a personal question. What is the closest distance between the 2 closest windmills that you own?
Oh, geez. That's a good question. If everyone could hear it, the question was, What is the closest distance that we have between the two closest wind turbines? And unfortunately, I don't have that specific number. I'm happy to get it for you. I can speak to kind of how they're sited if you want, just kind of quickly. So in general, there are a number of rotor diameters in between each turbine. And when we go through the process of siting a turbine, the reason there's a whole number of things that go into it, which is why we need 21,500 acres to build a project that impacts 35. Part of it is setbacks, which my colleague Bree will speak to, and other requirements within the ordinance. The other part is designing the most efficient layout that we can. And so when turbines are too close together, they can impact each other, and therefore they generate energy at a less efficient rate. Yes, sir.
Mr. Clayton, if you could just keep your voice up so folks
I
in the
just
back.
have two more questions.
Very good. Go right
You
ahead.
said you had a Charleston office. Would you give us the address of that?
I can, yes. I unfortunately don't know it off the top of my head, but I can get it for you this evening and get it to you.
And then my last question, you stated, and you have it here, that this company is totally American owned.
Yes, sir.
There's no foreign investment in this country at all.
No.
This company at all.
Correct.
That kind of dispels something that has been going around.
Sure.
And that's what I wanted to view.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Mr. Clayton. Hang on, we're going to get committee members first, and then you'll go next. Any other questions from members of the committee? Mr. Watts.
Yeah, on slide number 14, where it talks about certain tax revenue,
Yes, sir.
is that over the 30-year process, right?
Yes, sir.
And is there another that there's a whole flow of things like the project,
Sure, yes. And again, Mr. Loomis is here, Dr. Loomis is here, and he'll be able to speak to this specifically. But these numbers, if anything, are conservative. And he can speak specifically to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Freesley.
I'm assuming that we'll hear testimony later on the addition of water impact.
Yes, sir.
There we'll have somebody who will speak more.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, my colleague Adam will be able to address that. Yep.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Freesley. Anybody else on the committee? Yes, Mr. Dowdy.
If you'll be patient with me, I wrote notes, so I have several questions I'll flip through.
Sure.
You talked about 119 family agreements.
Yes, sir.
There's 62 originals, so I'm assuming there are multiple, like apartments owned by those that inherited like several things.
Sure.
Is that what that means?
So, well, we have 119 agreements, yes. And the question was, if I can phrase that, the agreements may be across several families who are in there. Is that?
On one piece of property.
It could be, yeah. Or it could be one family. It could be in a trust. So there's a whole host of different ways in which the ground may be owned.
Because there's only 62 locations.
Sure, yes. But the 119 agreements span the 21,000 acres that are participating.
I know what that means.
So we have agreements which are in the form of a wind lease, and a lease would be on a specific parcel of land. So across 119 agreements, that covers 21,500 acres. So it could be that a family owns one parcel, or they might own 30 parcels. Just throwing numbers out there. And so when all of that comes together, you have the map that's up there, or back here with all of the green signs. And then when we go through the effort of planning the project, that's where we get down to the 62 individual points that are planned.
Thank you.
No, take your time.
So you talked about, and maybe someone else will answer this
Sure.
question, 456,000 in tax revenue for the general fund every year. Is that an offset of the taxes that are already being paid, or are you taking that as, did you decrease like the current payments?
That the county is receiving?
Yes. So that land's already being taxed, right?
Correct.
At the farm.
It doesn't change that value. And Dr. Loomis can speak to that specifically, but we're required to plat all of our facilities, and we'll have a separate PIN that is issued for all of our facilities, and then issued a property tax bill for those. So participating landowners won't see any additional tax impacts to their property. we pay that directly to Coles County. So the facilities that we own and we install on the property, we will pay the property tax for that. So that $456,000 annually doesn't impact the value or the tax revenue from the underlying ground.
Right, and I guess my question is, what's currently being paid?
Sure.
With this 456, that would be your total bill?
That'll be, yes, on average,
So
yes.
I don't know what's currently being paid, so there won't quite be 456, right?
No, it will be 456. So the property owner will continue to get their property tax bill as if
There
there's no...
won't be an increase to the county for 456,000, because they're already getting property tax on that.
It's new money. So you will continue. So let's say there's a wind turbine on a 40. You will still get the agricultural property tax from that 40. And then our facilities will be additional tax revenue to the county. Correct.
And then, so, I think that you said Dr. Loomis was going to maybe address this, but have no negative impact on residential agricultural property values. I too am more interested in that for the case of land.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so as I said, Mr. Drew from Cone Resident is here, and he can speak specifically to study that's included in the special use permit application. And luckily this isn't the first wind farm in Illinois. And so the study really does look at comparative literature on these projects, on their impact in counties where they're located. It evaluates existing wind farms and property sales in counties of projects that are of equivalent size, or roughly the equivalent size as this, on adjacent property values and property sales. And additionally, he talked to the county and township assessors, and specifically county and township assessors that have wind farms in their districts, and has to see that there's no evidence that from all of that has a negative impact on the properties. But again, I'll be happy to kick it to him to address it specifically since he's an expert in the subject.
Thank you. One more question on so that economic or the tax benefit begins in 2027.
It'll begin, yes, once we hit operations. Yes, sir.
So during the 2-year bill, it's just business as usual for those landowners.
Well, there's a number of facets of the agreement, yes, that would govern sort of the financial impact to them, whether they're paid for development or paid into operations.
And just my comment is, thank you for our investing in Coles County with community engagement and grants.
Oh, thank you. And we're as I've said, we're proud to be here, and we take not only our stewardship of our participants' property seriously, because that is critically important, but we take our role in the community seriously.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dowdy. Any other questions from members of the committee? All right, now, questions from members of units of local government, including school districts. Sir, from the county board.
Thank you.
Could you please state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Yes, my name is Rick Shook. Last name is S-H-O-O-K. I'm a Coles County board member, 8th District, Mattoon. My question is, you have friends that are involved with the wind turbines. You have your local owners of the land, and you have friends. How many friends do you have involved?
Do you mean like in a participation agreement or a good neighbor agreement? I unfortunately I don't have that specific number. So we have a number of agreements, a wind lease or good neighbor agreement. I don't have that in front of me. I can certainly get that for you. But we've worked closely with folks who may be interested in participating in the project, but maybe don't have enough farm ground to host a wind turbine or other facilities. And so we work with them on what we call a participation agreement or a good neighbor agreement, where they're able to participate in the project and see some financial benefit.
I was going to ask that too.
Yes.
They also get paid.
Yes, sir.
How much is that?
It depends, but it's not a huge amount of money compared to the wind lease, but in general, and the way we approach all of our participation payments to property owners here is we try and keep it equitable, right? So everyone gets paid the same per capita for the number of acres that they have in the project. Now, wind turbine payments are obviously more, But
So
on the
Friends
pieces,
don't have the land.
Friends don't have a lot of land, yes. So it's generally, in general terms, a few $1,000s.
Is that per year?
Correct.
So how long does that last?
Lasts for the life of the project, so it would be 30 years.
So they're getting roughly $2,000
Yes, sir.
a month, excuse me,
A year, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. Council, will you get the information requested by Mr. Shook? Thank you. All right, any other questions from members of units of local government?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Could you please state your name?
My name is Bob Bennett, EPP, District 11 in Coles County. And the question is about the funding of the project.
Yes, sir.
The generous contributions of communities are appealing to everyone. But is the project something that's funded by the sale of energy, or is it federally subsidized?
It is not federally subsidized. So the question, if everyone could hear it or didn't hear it, was what percentage or how is the project funded? So everything up until the point in which we hit operations, Apex is at risk for. So that is an investment that we make in the community, and that is how we do business. So we are at risk for everything to this point.
So your return is solely based on the sale of energy?
Correct, yes. And so the way these projects work is the electricity is sold out into the future, and so that revenue from the sale of electricity is what funds the project and the company. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett, for your questions. Any other members of units of local government? Questions for Mr. Moore? All right, very good. Thank you. There being no parties represented by licensed attorneys, we go to other interested parties. Members of the public with questions for Mr. Moore. May I just see a show of hands? This gentleman has his hand up, and then there's several over here, and then one over here. All right, and one back there. Okay, gentlemen right in front here, come forward, please, to the podium.
Hello, Dave Hofer, citizen of Charleston.
How do you spell your last name, sir?
H-O-F as in Frankie, R.
H-O-F-E-R?
Yeah.
Okay, very good, Mr. Hofer. Thank you. Your questions for Mr. Moore, then.
Well, Mr. Moore, I'm concerned about, I don't know, if people will be indemnified if their wind damage from a really bad storm, the blade rips off and, I don't know, spears somebody or damages their building, or is it just another act of God during a tornado? How would you answer that question?
Yes, I mean, quite frankly, the answer is, Apex owns the facilities, and Apex would be the party that would be responsible for cleanup or damages were any event to happen. Landowners who are participating and others are indemnified from any impact, and so we are at risk, and so if there were an event where there was damage, or one of our employees, whether it was during construction or during operations, created some damage on property in the area, Apex would be the party that would be responsible for that.
What's the risk of that happening? Do you have any probabilities?
I don't have specific probabilities on that. It's incredibly low, but I don't have specific numbers.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hofer. Who was in the front over here? Ma'am, in the, is that teal? Blue? Yes, ma'am. Like a big crowd at church on a Saturday night. Please step forward, and if you could please state your name.
Connie Winslow,
How do you spell your last name, ma'am?
W-I-N-S-L-O-W.
Very good. Your questions then for Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore, how many construction workers or truck drivers were electrocuted or killed during the Apex Wind Farm construction in Piatt County?
The question, if you couldn't hear it, was how many construction workers were killed? Was that the correct question?
Yes.
And again, it's a little bit out of my lane. I'm not the person who builds these projects. Adam is here, and I know he can address it in specifics. But I will answer your question that there was one fatality during construction.
I know of two, truck driver and an electrician.
I don't believe that's accurate, but I do know there was a truck driver.
Did Apex Wind pay for anti-negative campaign material mailers in any of the Ford County Board elections?
Did Apex pay for anti-wind? Anti-wind?
Anti-negative campaign material mailers in any Ford County Board elections?
To my knowledge, no.
Hoopston Wind in Vermilion County is owned by IKEA Furniture Company, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Prosperity Wind in Piatt County is owned by Acres Capital.
It is owned by Apex Clean Energy, and Aries Capital is a financial partner of Apex.
What does the tax income and lease payment amount have to do with the zoning laws and sitting plans in the zoning ordinance?
I mean, the specific question was, what does the tax revenue have to do with the citing and zoning laws in the ordinance? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of experts who will be here this evening and can address any specific questions you have about how the project meets the criteria of the Coles County Board.
Final question is, will all of the neighbors and residents around the turbines be able to sleep in their homes?
I don't know if I can answer that question.
Yeah. That's all.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Winslow. Next, okay, this gentleman. Yeah, right here. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Tom Sherman. Last name is Sherman. I live in northern Coles County. You talked about the 119 agreements, but yet in your application, those 119 agreements really only amount to 74 people. Of those 74 people, only 37 actually live in Coles County. The other 37, while they own property, don't live in Coles County. Can you address that?
That is accurate.
To the property tax thing. In the ordinance, can you direct me to exactly the section, page number, itemized number where we're talking about economic development?
I can't in a specific ordinance, no, but I'm also not the only expert who will be speaking this evening.
Yeah, I do have an expert that will be speaking specifically to economic impact.
I look forward to that. And my last question for right now. About the EAV piece and the diminishment, that there's not really any diminishment of that. Yet in your 698-page application, in Appendix E, there are two places that you say, of the most cited 19 wind studies in North America, all but 4 concluded that the proximity of a wind farm to a residential home has no negative impact on property value. 4 out of 19, to me, is 21%. That means 21% do have a negative impact.
Respectfully,
Mr. Case, I'm going to object. I think that completely mischaracterizes the testimony. He's certainly welcome in his testimony to make that point if he wants to make the point, but Mr. Moore certainly didn't get into the details of those studies. We have a separate expert, we've already said, who's going to testify to this point. I think it's well beyond the scope of his testimony.
It wasn't even a question. It was a statement. Okay? So, Mr. Hess, I understand your objection. Mr. Sherman, you are making good points, but this is the time to ask Mr. Moore questions. You can make statements during your time to testify or during public comment. But now is the time for you to ask questions.
Okay, then I'll rephrase it this way.
Yes, sir. Good.
Does 21% seem like a substantial number to you?
Objection. I'm going to, with all due respect, wait because he's talking a bit about an appendix that Mr. Moore did not discuss during his presentation. It's outside the scope of his testimony. But again, we do have an expert here that can testify to that.
Who do you have?
We have Mr. Andrew Lyons from Cone Reston.
Okay, when Mr. Lyons comes up, Mr. Sherman, that'll be the perfect time for you to address that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Antonioli, thank you for clarifying that for us. Okay, Mr. Hartke. How are you tonight? Jamie, this is Ted Hartke, H-A-R-T-K-E.
Seems like you know me already. Okay.
I do.
I'm Ted Hartke. I live up near Sidney, Illinois. S-I-D-N-E-Y. That's in southern Champaign County. And my history with wind farms, and the reason I'm asking questions is my wife and I and my family, we abandoned our home in Vermilion County. So here's my first question. In specific to Apex Wind Company projects, in Vermilion County in 2013, how many houses did Apex purchase in that project?
Respectfully, I'm going to object. I'm not sure, first of all, the relevance of a completely different project in a completely different county. Second, Mr. Moore testified he's worked for Apex for 7 years. How could he possibly testify as to what happened in 2013?
I think we're an expert.
Okay. Folks, we need Mr. Hess to make his argument, and I need to rule on it. I'm going to overrule, and I'm going to direct the witness. If you know what happened back in, what year was it, Mr. Hartke?
It was in 2013, the purchase of 3 homes.
Do you know anything about that project in 2013, Mr. Moore?
Other than I visited that project, I don't know the specifics of the scenario that you're asking.
So do you know the answer to his question?
I do not know the answer.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's move on.
Okay, Mr. Moore, were you present at the Piatt County testimony, all the nights of testimony in Piatt County just, I think, 12 months ago?
Almost all of them, yes.
Were you present for my presentation?
I was, yes.
You remember when I presented and asked about the 3 homes that Apex purchased? So did you just tell this gentleman the truth when you said you didn't have any clue?
I don't know the specifics. I do know that there were homes sold, but I don't know any of the details.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Earlier, the gentleman asked, or one of the gentlemen in the booth over here, board members, they asked about a federal tax credit. When Apex purchased...
If I could correct you, he did not ask about a federal tax credit. He asked about a subsidy.
Okay, so federal subsidy. I'm going to ask if we can talk about a production tax credit.
Yes, sir.
Does Apex Wind Company receive a production tax credit for each kilowatt megawatt that they produce?
For projects that do get into operations, there are projects that do receive, yes, the production tax credit.
Will this one get production tax credit money?
I believe it will.
Okay. About how much of the production tax credit money income is compared to what you actually sell electricity for to the final buyer, purchaser of the power?
So, I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Okay, when you guys produce power,
Yes.
and you make 100 megawatts, you get some money from the power company or the utility company that buys the power. You also get some money from the production tax credit. Is this thing about a half and half from production tax credit,
No,
half
sir.
from the buyer? Do you have any?
So, the way it works is it's effectively a tax credit that goes towards the overall cost of the project. So it does enable the project to then reduce the energy cost. But it is similar, if not less, than what the tax credit they may receive from every other source of electrical generation.
All right, and we're talking about generation tax credit, only the production tax credit. And does this project get any investment tax credit like solar farms do?
It would not get both. And I don't know if it would get either investment or production tax credit. You would only get one or the other. You cannot do both.
Okay, good. So this project is probably only getting the production tax credit portion, right? And about a minute ago, you said that the production tax credit goes towards reducing the cost of the construction of the project. Wouldn't that be the investment tax credit that would go towards reducing the cost of the construction of the project?
I mean, I'm not an expert on this, so I can't speak
Okay.
to that.
I'm going to ask if a neighbor has children in bed at night and they can't sleep, who will they call for the residents? Who will they call when that happens?
Who would they call?
Yeah.
If we have a neighbor and there's a complaint, we have the office that they can call. We have a person who's on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can come visit us at the O&M building during normal business hours and sometimes after that if people are there. Or they can reach out via email to
Okay, several ways to reach you if there's a problem, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you, this is probably for a noise expert, but in Platte County, I regretted not asking you this question because the noise guy said that I missed my opportunity to ask you, or the attorneys did or something. So this is why I'm asking you, Mr. Allen. Alan Moore, I mean. Do you know very much about the Illinois Pollution Control Board regulations? Do you know much about that? That I can ask questions about that?
Respectfully, Mr. Harkin, I'm going to object, Mr. Gates. He didn't testify to noise. We have a noise expert here.
That's fine. I just want to see if you would be willing to testify anything about that.
Mr. Harkey, thank you for your question, but I'm sustaining the objection because it is beyond the scope.
That's no problem. I understand I have to try
Well,
to see
sure.
if he would even be able to be willing to ask or answer any of those kinds of questions.
I absolutely understand where you're going, Mr. Harkey, and I appreciate that, but
Okay.
when we get to that expert witness, you will have ample opportunity to question that person.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. I think the attorneys here said it, but I want to see if you said it too. You're telling this board here that all the conditions are going to be met for all of their zoning ordinances, right?
Yes, sir.
And if we find something, you're going to have to fix it before they will approve it, right? If we find something that
And I
doesn't
think
meet
that's
the
what we're
Illinois law.
here to discuss. And I
That's
think
what
we're
we're-
still
that's
waiting
what
on
we're here for.
testimony from the...
One at a time, guys. Mr. Harkey, let him answer the question. Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Our project meets all the criteria of the Coles County.
Okay. And if there's an issue, and we find it during these hearings, you guys can update and change it to meet the code, correct?
Depends on what you're alluding to.
All right. I'll have to allude to it later because I'm getting shut down for asking you stuff you don't know about. Okay? Or you weren't willing to answer. That's all I have. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Harkey. All right, the gentleman in the back, he's coming forward. As he comes forward, just still a show of hands. Who still wants to? Okay, this lady right here in about the third row, the gentleman in the back, and then this gentleman in front of him seated there. And also this one back there. Okay, sir, what is your name?
Yes, my name is Kirk Allen. Allen, A-L-L-E-N. First name is Kirk, K-I-R-K.
Kirk Allen. Very good. Go right
I
ahead.
just have one brief question in relation to, we started this with, everything is under oath. In this report, or this presentation, you talk about $275 million in direct economic benefit. When a vast majority of those people don't live in Coles County, how is that a direct economic benefit to Coles County?
I mean, they own property in this county.
That didn't answer my question.
Sure. I mean, I think my point is it is $275 in direct economic benefit from this project. A very large portion of that does come here to Coles County, whether that's in property taxes, whether that's in money for roads, whether that's going to schools, whether that's going to a large portion of the landowners who do live in the community. Certainly there are landowners who own property and participate who don't live in Coles County.
So you're acknowledging it's not all direct economic benefit.
It is all direct economic benefit, yes, but not every dollar flows directly into Coles County.
I'm confused.
You know, it might help again to defer this question to Dr. Loomis, who can talk about what went into the methodology for determining the direct impacts and factoring in the landowners that don't live in the county. So his report addresses all those things.
Okay, Ms. Antonioli, you're saying that Dr. Loomis would provide more clarity because he's the expert
He is
on
the author of the report, correct?
Okay. And this gentleman, as the project developer, was just giving us an overview of this?
Overview, yes.
Okay, very good. I think I understand.
So is it safe then to acknowledge the $275 million in direct economic benefits? You can't speak to that.
I think that Dr. Loomis can maybe answer your question a little more clearly.
So you can't speak to that as an expert witness, correct?
I'm not. I mean, I think Dr. Loomis would be the best person to answer your question. the specifics.
Thank you. Point made.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Okay, now the lady in the third row who had her hand up. Oh, I thought that was attached to her. It's you. Go ahead. Sir, what is your name?
My name is Phil Borgman.
I know.
Borgman, Phil Borgman, B-O-R-G-M-A-N.
Mr. Borgman, go right ahead with your questions for Mr. Moore.
In Illinois, of how many of these projects, proposed projects, were not approved by the zoning boards?
I mean, I can't speak to across the entire state of Illinois.
For Apex.
For Apex, not approved?
Yeah, not approved.
I mean, I know one that I worked on certainly was not approved by the zoning board. It was approved by the county.
What were the reasons they gave cited for that, or did they just vote on it and not give you a citation?
There was a lot of discussion, so I mean, I'm sure that you can find all the specifics covered, whether it's in media or court transcripts.
What project was that, so we could look that up?
Prosperity Wind.
Prosperity, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In Piatt County.
In Piatt County,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
We are in northern Coles County as well, and the proposed drop yard is right at the end of our road. We have animals, children. How do you ensure that your construction crews don't, step outside and run off the road? Because I've worked in all over Illinois in different wind farms, and you have to get off the road for the trucks when they come down the road, and it just seems like kind of a pain. How do you ensure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not the construction expert here. My colleague Adam, who is building the project in Piatt and will build this project here, can speak to more of those specifics. But a lot of the activity that we will do in this project will be governed by our road use agreements with the townships and the county. And so that will oversee the roads we can use, when we can use them, et cetera.
Okay. With the drop yard being at the end of our road about a mile away, you said that you will not have any negative impact on the water, the wells, or anything like that. If you're going to control dust on those roads, where are you going to get the water from if you're not pulling it from local watershed?
Sure, yeah. And again, a little bit out of my lane, so I'm more than happy to let Adam address it specifically, and he will. We looked through we haven't gotten to that point yet to know specifically whether it'll come from a well or from another high, flow commercial well in the area used for pipe use.
That's all I have for this time.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Borgman, for your questions. All right, is there anybody over on this side of the room? Yes, ma'am. Good evening. Could you please state your name for the court report?
My name is Rita Rogers, R-O-G-E-R-S.
R-O-G-E-R-S. And it's Rita?
Rita, R-I-T-A.
Very good. Go right ahead with your questions for Mr. Moore.
All right, you talked about the impact on the community quite a bit and the benefits. Are there any benefits for Coles County outside of the money?
I mean, I guess it depends on what you look at for benefits. I mean, you will see increased quality in schools. You'll see better roads. But certainly money is a big benefit to the community.
So money. Whose money is what? Okay. The studies conducted, Apex pays for those studies? The
Yes.
studies that you mentioned? Okay. You mentioned American-owned and veteran-owned. I realize that's really beneficial for Apex to be able to say that. Another gentleman had talked about that, asking about it specifically being American-owned. Are all of the parts for the turbines made in America?
Certainly not all the parts, no.
Okay. I just think that's important to note because
For
American-owned
sure.
versus American-made, those
Yes.
are two different things. Did you happen to be in town Saturday night during the storms?
I was not, no.
All right. I just wondered if you happened to see the news where the meteorologist spent a good 3 minutes discussing how they could no longer identify storms in the area where turbines are. I have a good friend that lives in Fowler, Indiana as well, where there are turbines, and there have been for 30 years. They haven't been able to tell whether a tornado is coming for about the 25 years or whatever the turbines have been. So weather patterns are interrupted, and the radar is unable to detect whether a turbine.
Ms. Rogers, do you have a question for him?
Well,
on
my
that?
question was, do you know that? Do you understand that?
Do I understand that weather patterns that
Are
turbine-
unable to be determined because
I don't
of...
think that that's accurate. So
Well, the meteorologist said it on TV, so...
yeah.
He said he could not see... They literally said they could not see swirl patterns were telling them a tornado was coming in the area where our turbines.
So I can't speak to that specific wind turbine or where,
And I
who
have
that
friends who
meteorologist
live
is.
that, live through that. Okay. Last question is good neighbor agreements. Do you have that form that everyone can see, and what does it mean to be a good neighbor?
I don't have it in front of me. I believe it's included in the application. So the form should be in the special use permit application. What it means is you are participating in the project, but it does not give us the rights to site any facilities on your property.
How so participating?
How so participating?
Yeah.
I mean, financially, you receive some money from us, and then, you know, from our perspective, most people who look at the desire to participate in the project are looking for financial payment. They're also looking to be part of it because they realize the project's going to move forward, and so we look at it as a way to enable people to see some economic benefit from the project, to be a participant in the project moving forward. But again, these agreements are signed on properties generally that are small and aren't able to host facilities.
So it's kind of like a payoff for having it next to you, because it's not really pleasant to be around.
That's not my understanding of it, but I can't control how other people would perceive it.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rogers. Okay, the gentleman in the back standing up.
I'm Nathaniel Phipps. I guess I would be an adjacent property owner.
Can you spell your last name?
PHIPPS. My wife and my two children were kind of in the midst of about 5 of those, and we got a flyer in the mail. I don't know the impacts of all this. I work in the energy industry, but not in wind. And I guess I'm just somewhat confused how the whole project cycle goes, because with a good neighbor mindset, it's kind of a pitch. I mean, we got a flyer in the mail to show up here, but we're going to live in the shadow of flat these things. What are some of the negative impacts? I guess how do we get better clarity on that, other than just sending potentially several meetings to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to speak to you more directly about specific questions when we're not here in this big room, or you can speak to any of my colleagues who are here as well.
Okay.
If you have specific questions.
Yeah, I can't think of any on the top of my head, just other than being an adjacent landowner with literally being surrounded by these, and we've gotten very little notification other than legal requirement. So, I guess the good neighbor thing, I guess how far does that extend? Not looking for a payout, just if it's an adjacent property but it's only 5 acres and you don't pay attention to them.
No, I mean, I can't speak to your specific instance. I do know that we've talked to many, if not most, of the property owners in the project area. If we did not get to you, it could have been that a mailer was sent to you, it never got there. It could have been a phone call was made and never returned. It could have been, I don't know. I can't, again, speak to that specific instance. More than happy to have the conversation to answer specific questions you might have and specific to your ground.
I'm sure we'll have more as it kind of
Sure.
goes on here, but just wanted to at least state that we're literally surrounded by them and no notification or anything. So that doesn't really spell good news.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps. Now is the time to ask questions of the witness. You can testify later, but thank you very much. Okay, gentleman in second row from the back. That's you. I've completely forgotten your name. I just saw you hours ago in hearing in Vermilion County. State your name for the court reporter, please.
Sure can. My name is Arthur Croncat. I'm from Vermilion County. I was born and raised. I'm down here to speak some truth to this group.
Mr. Carlson,
yes.
It's time for questions, remember?
I know. I'm just letting everybody know why I'm here. Mr. Moore, sound study. Were there any studies having to do with infrasonic frequencies?
Again, I mean, you can review the sound study itself. It looks at a variety of different octave bands, and again, we have an expert here who can speak specifically to it better than myself.
And they're going to be speaking this evening.
Well, if we get to it this evening, I'd love for that.
All right. You say you're an American company. How much of your revenue or your costs go to China? The turbine systems, the gearboxes, and the generators are major costs in those machines, and they're all made in China.
I can't speak to that specifically.
Yeah, okay. Okay, contributions. You know, some people would say that all your contributions are really just buying people off. Is that true?
No.
Aerial spraying. Are you aware that wherever you put a wind turbine up, you can no longer do aerial spraying with crop dusters?
No, that's not true.
Really? You can fly in amongst those?
Yes.
Okay. Health surveys. Do you folks ever do any health surveys after a turbine system goes in?
What do you mean by a health
Going
survey?
door to door, knocking and saying, how's your health? You know, like, you know, somebody from the county comes through or whatever, and they ask questions on their people's health after the installation.
No.
Okay. You said restore land. You know, how do you define restoring land? I mean, all the cables in the ground, you pull all those out, you dig up the big, you know, what else do you do?
I mean, again, you can look at our decommissioning study that outlines it specifically. It meets the standards of the county ordinance, it meets the standard from the state of FEMA. So we follow or exceed all of those.
Okay. So you can take farmland, dig it and everything, and tear it up, and then it'll grow the same stuff again?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you take people's First Amendment rights away in the contract? In your contracts, anyone that signs a wind turbine contract can never speak of those turbines again, correct?
Speak of the turbines?
Yes. For or against?
No.
So, really? So there is no contractual agreement?
There is a confidentiality clause, yes.
Right, that they can't talk about it, right?
And in my experience in having these, more often than not, the individuals want to have that in there because it's a private business deal between their family and our project.
Do they even know it's in there?
Yes, absolutely.
So people give up their First Amendment rights, okay?
Mr. Conkright, questions, please.
I'm sorry. Good neighbor agreement. What do those entail? Besides the money, we know that.
Sure. I mean, if you really want to see it, it'd be best if you review the permit application because the forms in there.
Are those people allowed to speak as to their experiences after they've signed the contract?
Yes.
They are. Okay. Tax credit versus, you know, can you explain the difference between what a tax credit and direct income from the government? What's the difference?
I mean, I'm not a tax expert, no. So I can't speak specifically to that. What I can say is that the production tax credit is based on energy produced by the wind farm. And so it is not a subsidy that goes towards the project.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Conkright, for your questions. Anybody else in the room? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Miller. And then, sir, did you have your hand up? Okay, very good. You'll be next.
Becky Miller from Vermilion County. I have just a couple of quick questions. You said you have a couple other projects in the state.
Yes.
But you didn't say where they are. So from listening, I assume one is in Piatt County.
Yes, ma'am.
And where is the other one?
We developed a project in Houston County. We've developed...
Houston County.
In Vermilion County.
So
Houston.
is that the project that's in northern Vermilion County? Is Apex?
It is not owned by Apex. It is owned by IKEA.
But Apex developed it?
Apex developed it, yes.
Is that the one Mr. Hartke was referencing?
It's the one that he referenced, yes.
Okay. So what about the one in Ford County? Is that?
We also developed that project, yes. But we don't own that project currently, no.
So let me rephrase this.
Yes.
What counties have you developed projects in Illinois?
Have we developed? We've developed projects in a number of counties. So we've developed in Piatt County, in Coles County. We have earlier projects in development in Peoria and Iroquois, Shelby, Henry counties, and a few others.
Okay. How about Indiana?
We do have some projects in Indiana. I know we've worked on a project in Montgomery County, and I know we have a number of other projects in Indiana, but again, I don't work on this project. So
How about Ohio?
We have projects in Ohio as well.
Do you have part of the Long Prairie Wind Project in Ohio? Is that part of Apex?
I don't believe
Apex
so,
is
no.
pulling out of it or something like that?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
Ms.
Okay.
Miller, if you could get to the relevancy of these
No,
questions.
I'm just trying to figure out how widespread they are in the state of Illinois, because he said 2 places, but I'm gathering there's more than that.
Let's talk about Illinois, not Indiana and Ohio, okay?
Okay, also with the good neighbor agreements, a couple of people have mentioned them, you mentioned it earlier. My understanding, and this is what I want to know if my understanding is correct or not, once a neighbor signs that, then they're not allowed to speak out in favor or against.
No.
Because we're trying to figure out exactly what a good neighbor contract is, besides we give you some money.
Yeah. That's not accurate. You're not able to speak out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Okay, the gentleman in the light green shirt back on the wall. And after this gentleman, is there anybody else from the public? Okay, I see a red sleeve. Oh, that's right, you're there. Anybody else besides this person? Okay, yes, sir. Thank you, because I couldn't see you behind the speaker. All right, sir, what's your name?
Hi, good evening. My name is Dan Miller, and I have a quick question regarding, we talked about the taxes that were going to be generated off of this particular project. Our farmland taxes are always based off of an assessed value, so we know what our tax base is going to be.
Sure.
Can you talk about, has Coles County shared with you, you said that those particular mills and the land you own will be pinned and taxed ID to your Apex. Have they given you a heads up on what the assessed value would be so that we know if your tax base is accurate?
Sure, yeah. So again, Dr. Loomis is the expert here, but by state statute, every renewable energy project in the state is assessed at a specific value per megawatt. And so it doesn't actually come back to the local county assessor to assess the underlying installation on the property.
So Coles County has no recourse on whether they want to raise that tax base. It's all treated.
The value, correct. The underlying mill rate or the tax rate is set by Coles County. So the value per megawatt is set at the state level for every project in the state, and then the individual county's mill rate is governed, then the total tax rate on the specific project.
So those acres that you're taking out of production, they will be like, the landowner will not pay tax to Coles County on that. You will take over.
I believe it's the way it works, and again, Dr. Loomis is more of an expert on this subject than
But you
myself.
didn't present that earlier.
Sure. Yeah.
And
if
you
you let
don't know
me,
the answer. So we don't know the answer to that yet, or you do not know the answer.
if you let me address the question. So the way it works in the state is we are required to plat all of our facilities on the property. The county issues a PIN for those facilities, and I'm sure Dr. Loomis can speak to the specific code and law of how it is governed. And so then that separate PIN is not a true separation under the Plat Act in the state of Illinois. What it does do is allow us to then receive the property tax for the installation of facilities on that ground. So we receive the property tax, the underlying ground remains the same.
Thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay, back here with the red sleeve that was up in the air. It's not even red.
It's red on the vest.
It's red on the vest. Go ahead, if you could please state your name for the record.
My name is Devon Yoder.
Okay, spell your first and last.
Devon is D-A-V-O-N. Yoder is Y-O-D-E-R.
Okay, very good. Go right ahead.
A couple questions for you. First is the electricity that is generated from the project. Is that something that is going to be used locally? Is that spread across the state? Where does that go to?
Yeah, so this is a confusing topic, I can understand. So I kind of like to use the analogy of dollars that you put into an ATM and get out of an ATM, right? And so what we do is we put electricity onto the electrical grid. It moves at the speed of light all over the place. So it goes into Coles County, generally because of close proximity, it'll be used by residents here. But the way these projects work is often the electricity is sold via a purchase of power agreement to another entity, and then they acquire the electricity from a project like Coles Wind.
Okay. The next question is in reference to the state of Texas a couple years ago has a lot of renewable energy, and they had a grid go down for multiple days. And so the question here is the wind project here grid forming in that it produces power without relying on other projects to support it, to set a system voltage essentially? Is it grid forming? Is that something you can answer?
I think Adam would be a better person to specifically answer that. I'm not sure exactly what that phrase is.
As I understand, I'm quite interested in renewable energy generally. And so my understanding is that I've got a solar farm on my property, and the inverters there are based on incoming grid electric voltage. And so they produce a matching voltage when they're using the energy that they produce. And solar farms, generally speaking, that's how they work. And wind farms, as I understand it, work on the same principle. They have to see a set voltage. And so when there's no voltage there, it cannot produce energy to start up again on its own. And so there's some reliability issues. If the rest of some other plant goes down, if there's not enough voltage, then the the wind farm does not have the capacity to generate energy until it sees another voltage incoming to essentially start the wind farm. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, no. I think if you're trying to compare a specific scenario in Texas, which is a very different scenario than Illinois, and specifically MISO, the way in which the grid is operated and managed is significantly different. And so the balance of power that is on the electrical grid is coming from a lot of different sources, a lot of which is coming from wind, a lot of which is coming from solar, a lot of which is coming from more conventional sources. So my understanding is if the entire grid were to go down, I don't know that I can be qualified to speak to that, but I don't believe that would ever be realistic.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your questions. Okay, gentleman in the plaid shirt. What's your name, sir?
Yeah, good evening. Timothy Lickfett, Lickfett.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Lickfett.
Yeah, Mr. Moore, good evening. Hey, been hearing a lot of rumors, and so want to try to differentiate a little bit between fact and rumor. You're the head honcho of this whole thing. I live 7/10 of a mile north of the county line in Douglas County, kind of in the northeast corner, I guess you'd say, of the highlighted area of your project. I keep hearing rumors that should the moratorium that's currently in place in Douglas County on wind energy get lifted or bypassed or run over or what have you, is this project going to spill into Douglas County down the road?
No.
You can say this is going to stay where it's at.
Yes, sir.
Moratorium gets lifted, you don't start a new project, name it something else to get around it, or phase 2 or whatever. This is what it is.
Well, this project, absolutely, yes. Whether another developer or Apex would start another project in Douglas County in the future, I can't specifically speak to that, no. But this project will never bleed into Douglas County.
Thank you very much for your questions, sir. Anybody else from the public? I don't see any other hands, whether sleeves are red or black. I'm sorry that I missed that.
I don't have a question, but somebody left their cell phone up here. I've been noticing that for a while.
Okay. Can we have your name for the record?
Keaton 4.
Keaton 4?
Yep.
Keaton?
Tin.
Tinfoor?
Yep, that's me.
Thank you, Mr. 4. Anybody lose a cell phone?
Hey.
All right, there being no further questions from the public, questions now from Mr. Moore from Coles County staff and consultants. First of all, Mr. Lockhart, do you have any questions? Okay, very good. He's kind of hanging out back here, Mr. Lockhart, from the Planning Commission, or Planning Department. Mr. Kite, questions?
I have a few questions. I don't know if you want to recess for a moment or...
I was hoping to get through this witness
I'll
entirely.
give it a shot.
Jamie, are you okay? You okay? A few more minutes. Be brief, Mr. Kite.
I'll do my best. Mr. Moore, there's a batch plant that's proposed as part of the project. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In terms of water usage, you would agree that batch plants tend to use a fair amount of water in mixing the concrete?
They can. I guess it depends on what you mean by fair amount.
In that process, if there is water impacts to either wells or adjacent wells or any other water impacts, Apex would be willing to take care of those decreases in water that those people may experience.
Consider making sure that we
Just for clarity, what your application seeks is an application for site approval, 62 wind turbines, but Apex is only going to build 51 of those turbines, correct?
Yes.
In your project summary, there's a reference that there is a $650 million capital investment. When you say capital investment, can you describe for the committee what exactly you mean by that?
Sure. I mean, that would include the cost of the turbines themselves. That would include the cost of road improvements. That would include the cost of the components that go into the turbine. And that would include the cost that goes into the actual construction activities of the project.
You know how much of that cost is construction cost?
Ooh, that's a good question. The question was how much of the overall cost was the construction cost. I mean, I think Adam would be best able to speak to that more specifically because it's more of his scope of work. I could give rough numbers, but he can answer that question.
When it comes to decommissioning, I have a number of questions related to decommissioning.
Sure.
My assumption, Mr. Moore, is that you'll defer to other witnesses on that topic. Is that correct? When it comes to an emergency plans, has there been discussions with any of the fire protection districts?
Yes, sir.
Have those discussions with the fire protection districts resulted in any agreements with the fire protection districts?
Agreements. I mean, we've sent them our emergency action plan. We've sought feedback from them, and then that where we've received it, we will integrate it into the emergency action plan. And then that project again, or the emergency action plan again, is sort of a living document that continues to evolve over time.
You understand that there's most of the emergency response from fire protection districts done by volunteers of those fire protection districts?
Yes, sir.
To the extent that there is either training or equipment that they need, Apex would be willing to provide that training and equipment to them?
There should be no equipment that is needed, but we will certainly do ongoing training that takes place with impacted fires.
You also would agree that those fire protection districts, those are a taxing body in the state, correct? If there is an emergency that occurs at the wind farm or related to work done by the wind farm, would Apex be willing to reimburse those fire protection districts for the cost of responding to that emergency?
I mean, I'd be happy to have this conversation. I don't know that I know enough about a specific instance that you were referring to.
I wasn't referring to a specific one, just generic.
Or a specific type of it.
Yeah, but if there was an emergency, would Apex be willing to reimburse those fire districts for that emergency?
Yeah.
In terms of, at this juncture, I understand there's no road use agreements that are currently.
Yes, sir.
My understanding typically when it comes to road use agreements is part of the road use agreement understanding is that the developer will pay for improvements related or necessary for the roads to be able to handle the loads that are going to come. Is that fair?
Yes.
In terms of damages that might occur, then Apex would be responsible for any damages that may occur to the roads. Is that fair?
Yes.
Also fair that if there's emergency repairs that need to be made to those roads while the construction is going on, Apex would be willing to repair those costs or pay for those repairs. And then during the construction, there may be times where there would be roads that may have delays related to the construction. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Apex would be willing to make sure that the public is informed about what roads might be shut down at what times. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Is there currently a power purchase agreement in place?
Yes, there is.
Who is it with?
The Illinois Power Authority.
And for how many megawatts is that purchase agreement?
The entirety.
In terms of sound, my understanding, Mr. Moore, is you would defer to your sound expert on
Yes.
that. In terms of shadow flicker, is there a shadow flicker expert that you're going to call? I think that's all the questions I have for you, then, if you're going to defer the rest.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kite. All right. Final bite of the apple. Final questions come from members of the committee. On the committee. Yes, Mr. Clayton. question is, how many projects have not been approved and why?
And I wondered if there would be a expert witness testifying later, if it's appropriate, in answer to this question, because you said you didn't have that information.
His question was, would an expert witness have this information? Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to speak specifically for an individual zoning board member, so I can't necessarily truly say why they did not vote for it. So that would be the reason why.
Transparency.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can confirm that we wouldn't have a witness that could testify into what the mind of the decision maker, what the reason was for denial.
So they didn't have to give it.
That's correct. They didn't.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton. Any other members of the committee with questions for Mr. Moore? All right, very good. Mr. Moore, thank you. You may step down. All right, and your next witness is Ms. Anderson.
Did you get an opportunity to read us?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've got it sitting right here, and I guess Mr. Hess, you're chomping at the bit to do your redirect examination of the witness. I'm sorry.
Case, thank you, and this will be very brief.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, you received several questions from the public about older Apex projects. Hoopston, Fort Ridge.
We can't hear you.
We can't
Speak
hear
up.
you.
You received several questions from the public about older Apex projects. Hoopston and Fort Ridge specifically. And you testified that they are now owned by other entities. I want to make sure this is clear for this audience. Did Apex change its business model several years ago?
Yes, it did.
Does Apex now own and operate its projects?
Yes, it does.
So, Prosperity Wind in Piatt County, does Apex own and operate that project?
Yes, we'll operate it, but it owns it.
Lotus Wind in Coopin County, will Apex own and operate that project?
Yes, Apex will own and operate it.
More recent projects we've done in other states, such as North Carolina, do we own and operate the wind project there?
Yes, we do.
How about the wind project in Maine? Do we own and operate the project there?
Yes, we do.
No further questions? All right, very good. All right, now, Mr. Moore, you may step down. Your next witness is Bree Anderson. What is she going to testify to?
Yes, I'd like to call Ms. Anderson. She will testify to how the application meets the requirements of the Coles County Wind Ordinance.
Okay, before we get to Ms. Anderson, we've got to take a break.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who have been standing for a couple of hours, and we appreciate that. Mrs. Atkinson, our court reporter's fingers are about ready to fall off, and she's glaring at me. So the committee is in recess for 15 minutes. Let's come back. Let's see. Let's go 12 minutes. Come back at 8:35, please. This committee is in recess. Thank you.
But not for us to go back,
Satisfied with your answers?
I'd like to have
I am. I'm going to stay right here. Yep. I've never heard of it. He's an expert. He's verified. Now he can't answer that because it needs another expert.
friend there, and told him, I said, look, him being one, I was going to sit down the line, so I just planned to increase the, make it. Yeah, okay. Well, it'll help. It'll help. So they can get home. That's about it. I mean, I'm about to like, hey, go ahead and you can put one smack dab in the middle where my driveway is, and I'll move someplace else for 5 years.
When you put all these agreements and nobody with the agreements, hardly anybody is out there living under this. And yet we can't.
One of my dogs stuff like that.
Oh, I cannot bear that.
Yeah, he was massive. Like, kids, and our neighbors have 3 kids that ride their bikes up and down the yard.
Yeah, just like all those houses on 6th and 7th Street.
I mean, it's all, I bought the house cheap, it's sweat equity, and I'm not a tax.
They don't. Yeah.
Whatever. I'll fight it.
Yeah, we'll be right along. That's how. This is already done. There's no decision. There's no voting. There's no discussion. We have nothing to say. It's a done deal. commute as well. My dad's gone. He's been over 10 years old. Video on YouTube, I think I've seen the RV that you've seen. West somewhere. Maybe I'll pick that up somewhere. My dad ended up getting sitting on the belt buckle with a piece of grenade. And they found his thing, they just actually found him. My dad.
We were standing up.
Oh, you've been standing up. Maybe back, you know. I could not stand up. I would have had to. Well, no, I would have stepped up.
Say that twice.
I don't recognize you with your beard.
Oh, I know.
Is that your winter look?
No, it's going to be forever. I got tired of David. Oh, this is what I just put the Harvard. 8 minutes later, I'm on the road. I'm back in the I've been quite, I've been to 3 different bars. I went to Britain. But he's up in Champaign now. I like Britain really well. He did a wonderful job. Then this crazy guy left town. And then I had to go from that too. And then they got a replacement for Britain.
Yes, I
But he's part-time.
Yeah, Austin
And
does.
he's
Austin does fine. He does all the
Austin's busy.
All right, folks, if you could please take your seats. Folks, if you could please take your seats.
I'd make them do them for me. I call them up. Yeah. Austin.
Get the whole show now.
Something good.
Good seeing you, Jeff.
Yes. I'm looking for ideas to more guys. Trying to figure out. I just told my dad the other day.
Okay, folks, let's grab a seat. I think there's seats available.
That's interesting.
I think that's
All right, here's where we're going from this point forward. The rest of tonight, we have roughly 25 minutes until 9 o'clock. We're going to try to finish each night around 9 p.m. There's no strict hard and fast rule for that. And during the recess, I spoke with counsel for the developer, and their witness will take about 20 to 25 minutes. to testify, and that's all we'll get to. The questions for this next witness will come at the next session of this hearing. And just a reminder, at the conclusion of the testimony tonight, we're going to, just in open, not court, but in open meeting, we're going to discuss amongst committee members and the attorneys and their witnesses when we're going to meet next. So if you want to stick around for that, we will be opening up our calendars and finding dates. I think we're going to have to find 5 dates. All right, Ms. Antonioli, you're calling Ms. Anderson?
Yes, I am.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Very good. Counsel your witness.
And Ms. Anderson, can you state your name and spell it for the record?
Sure, it's Bree Anderson, B-R-I-E-A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N.
Can you please state your job title and briefly summarize your professional and educational background?
Sure, I'm a Senior Director of Project Permitting here at Apex Clean Energy. I've been with Apex nearly 4 years. Prior to that, I worked in environmental consulting on a similar role of writing permit applications for projects across the country for 14 years. I have an undergraduate degree in wildlife biology and a master's in GIS.
How many wind project permitting processes have you been involved with, an estimate?
Dozens across the country.
Okay, and how many approximately in Illinois?
4.
Okay. Okay, with that, no further questions. Can you please briefly summarize how the application that you drafted meets the requirements of the Coles County ordinance?
Hold on, Ms. Antonioli. We need to, are you tendering her as an expert witness?
Yes, I can do that now.
Yes, let's do that. Mr. Kite, any questions?
Just a few. The projects you have testified in, what role have you been testifying in those projects?
Similar role as today as the author of the permit application and how the project complies with the local rules applicable to that project.
Okay. Have you testified in any other role related to those dozen projects or the 4 in Illinois?
No.
Understood.
All right, I will find that Ms. Anderson is an expert in the area which she has her expertise, which is drafting and preparing applications and ensuring that the applications comply with applicable, whether it's statutory provisions or provisions contained in an ordinance. So she is an expert in that area, and she'll be allowed to testify on an unlimited basis. So go right ahead, Ms. Antonioli, with your next question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. Can you please briefly describe how the application that you drafted complies with the Coles County Wind Ordinance? And that's through the slide presentation that you've prepared.
Good evening. My name is Bree Anderson, and I am the Senior Director of Project Permitting here at Apex Clean Energy. I'm the one responsible for writing, collaborating, ensuring that this application here in this binder meets the Coles County Wind Ordinance. If I back up for just a minute, these are all of the states that I permitted energy projects in over my 18-year career. What I love about what this map represents is that every state or county is unique, has their own regulations for a project. That means that every project is unique. And therefore, we tailor our projects to you and your local community. It's my job to make sure we're designing our projects to comply with the local regulations. This requires immense collaboration with local officials like you on the ordinance, with the Apex team to ensure we're designing each project to meet the local rules, and with our project experts that complete studies that demonstrate we comply. And that's exactly what we've done here for Coles Wind. As many of you spent countless evenings learning about wind projects and adopting the initial wind ordinance in 2021 and 2022, our team was right there with you. And then again, in 2023, after the Illinois siting law was passed, Our team collaborated with you to update the ordinance to comply with state law. We've designed Coles Wind to comply with your local rules. This permit application, it's my world. I live in the details of putting these applications together for weeks, reviewing every map, report, and paragraph of text. This was my Christmas vacation this year so that we could submit our application in January to be here tonight. Tonight, I want to talk about 3 main topics. First, the application binder itself. I've intentionally organized this application to make it transparent that we follow your rules. Second, on project design. The ordinance has 3 areas that address turbine siting. They are turbine setbacks, noise levels, and shadow flicker. Every turbine location has to meet the requirements of each, and I'll show you how we've collaborated with experts to demonstrate that the project design complies with the ordinance. And third, there's a lot of regulations in the wind ordinance, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of them in detail here tonight, but they are all included in this binder. For example, the ordinance requires a communication analysis to be submitted. In the application, included as Appendix D4, are telecommunication studies that show that turbines are sited to avoid interference with telecommunications, including microwave beam paths, FCC licensed communication towers, land mobile and emergency services, AM/FM radio, and TV reception. The 2 areas that we often get questions at hearings like this that I will discuss in detail are safety and decommissioning. There is a ton of information in this application, and again, that's intentional to ensure we meet each requirement of the ordinance. There are 2 ways that I have organized the information in the application to be helpful for you. First, the layout of the application itself. Starting in Section 3, after the introduction and the overview, it follows the wind ordinance section by section. What I mean by this is if you compared the wind ordinance to the table of contents, it follows it exactly. The first requirement in the wind ordinance is a project summary. Section 3.1 is a project summary, and it goes on from there. Second, I've included a table starting on page 9, table 2.2, and that is a checklist of every requirement in the wind ordinance and where in the application, what section number, you can find the information. If there's supporting information, that specific appendix is also referenced. The rest of this big binder are maps, plans, supporting studies, and agreements to show you that we meet your requirements. The information in this application is here to answer your questions, and it certainly addresses the wind ordinance requirements. So hopefully the layout of the information and the checklist help you navigate this big binder a little more smoothly. We've designed the Coles Wind Project to meet the Coles County ordinance. All 62 turbine locations are sited to meet turbine setback requirements, noise regulations, and shadow flicker requirements. I'll talk about each of these individually now and how we've worked with experts to demonstrate that the project design complies with the ordinance. So the first place in the wind ordinance that affects turbine siting is in setbacks. A turbine setback is an area where a turbine can't be sited. The wind ordinance requires that setbacks are based on turbine height. Coles Wind is considering 2 turbine models, and so we based our setbacks on the taller of the 2 turbine models to ensure that they both comply with the wind ordinance. There are 2 setback distances in the wind ordinance, 2.1 times tip height and 1.1 times tip height. Let's look at what these mean. Turbines must be sited at least 2.1 times tip height from occupied community buildings, non-participating residences, and protected lands. This means that turbines cannot be sited closer than 2.1 times tip height of the taller turbine, which is 1,352 feet. That's over 1/4 of a mile. And in many cases, our turbines are even further. For example, there are no protected lands in the project area. We are miles from them, as shown on figure A6 in the application. Additionally, the closest turbine to an occupied community building or non-participating residence is sited over 150 feet past the setback distance. We've added some additional buffers so that we're not siting turbines right at the edge of the setback or as close as we could. That's our Apex best practice. Similar story when we look at setbacks from other features. The wind ordinance requires turbines to be sited at least 1.1 times tip height from participating residences, non-participating parcels, public roads, and overhead electric utilities. 1.1 times tip height of the taller turbine is 709 feet. This means that turbines cannot be sited closer than 709 feet to these features. Coles Wind has sited all turbines more than double this distance from participating residences, over 1,500 feet, and at least 725 feet from non-participating parcel lines, public roads, and overhead electric utilities. We've sited our turbines in the middle of agricultural areas, away from homes, the traveling public, and other electric infrastructure. Regardless of the setback distance, 2.1 or 1.1 times tip height, this is why, as Alan described, we have over 21,500 participating acres to accommodate your setback requirements. Coles Wind demonstrates compliance with setbacks in multiple ways. They are on figures A3 and A4 in the binder. They're on the poster boards in the room. And we've also provided the GIS data to the county reviewing our application. We want to be completely transparent and collaborative in the siting of our turbines and show that they meet the county's setback requirements. The second place in the wind ordinance that affects turbine siting is related to noise levels. Turbines are machines, and therefore they do make some sound. The wind ordinance requires that turbine sound must comply with the Illinois Pollution Control Board regulations, and that limit is about 45 decibels. Think about conversational speech, the one-on-one conversations many of you were having just during this break. If you're standing at a residential property, you can expect turbine sound to be about half as loud as conversational speech. To demonstrate compliance with the Illinois Pollution Control Board regulation, Coles Wind hired a third-party expert, RSG, who's here tonight, to model the project's turbine sound. The Coles Wind project complies with the local and state law, even with 4 conservative modeling assumptions. The first modeling assumption, we included all 62 turbine locations, even though we're only going to build 51. The second modeling assumption, we've added a 2 decibel adjustment factor to the sound power level. This means that we've modeled the turbines with sound power levels that are 2 decibels higher than the manufacturer's specification. The third assumption, the model assumes that all turbines are always operating at the maximum sound emission, which doesn't happen. And the fourth assumption, the model assumes that all receptors are downwind from every turbine, which is not meteorologically possible. And lastly, while not a modeling assumption, turbines are sited to meet the more restrictive nighttime standard, which is quieter than the daytime standard. These conservative modeling assumptions are consistent with the wind turbine sound modeling standard used by noise control engineering professionals. The sound report is included in the binder as Appendix D5, and it demonstrates that turbine sound is below the Illinois Pollution Control Board limits at residential properties. So even with the conservative assumptions, turbines are cited to be quieter than a conversation at residential properties and to meet the local and state requirements. Lastly, Coles Wind has provided to the county the sound power curves of the turbine models so that they can independently confirm that the turbines are sited to meet the Illinois Pollution Control Board limits. The third place in the wind ordinance that affects turbine siting is related to shadow flicker. Shadow flicker occurs when it's sunny and the turbines are operating. The moving turbine blades create a moving or a flickering shadow. This is similar to sunlight passing through moving tree branches. The Coles County Wind Ordinance requires that shadow flicker does not exceed 30 hours per year at non-participating residences and occupied community buildings unless they've signed a waiver. Just like we did for sound, we hired a third-party expert, EDR, who's here tonight, to model the shadow flicker at the project. The shadow flicker report in Appendix D8 in the binder shows that even when modeling all 62 turbine locations, all non-participating residences and occupied community buildings will receive less than 30 hours of flicker per year, and therefore, no waivers are needed. All turbines are sited in compliance with the wind ordinance with respect to shadow flicker. Coles Wind is designed to meet the Coles County ordinance. As I've just reviewed, all turbines are sited to comply with setback requirements, the Illinois Pollution Control Board sound regulations, and shadow flicker requirements. And perhaps equally as important, we've sited turbines on private land in coordination with our landowners. Every landowner has had the opportunity to review the preliminary site plan and provide feedback. That's really important to us. Nobody knows their land like a landowner. And that's why we're here in Coles County, working with this community on private land. As you may recall, in January, President Trump issued an executive order on wind projects. I imagine people in this room might be wondering what that means for Coles Wind. President Trump's executive order does not impact Coles Wind. The executive order specifically addresses offshore wind projects in the ocean and in federal waters, wind projects on federal land, and those that require federal permits. That's not the Coles Wind project. We're here in Coles County on private land, working through your permit process for a well-sited project that does not require federal permits. We often receive questions on two other topics, safety and decommissioning, so I want to explain the steps we've taken now in the development phase of the project and how we'll continue to be a good community partner over the life of the project. As you've heard from Alan, safety is one of our 5 core values at Apex. On all of our projects, including this one, we work with emergency responders in the project planning phase. You'll hear more about this from my colleague Jason, but our coordination with local emergency responders has already started. In November, we met with several local emergency response officials. We shared an emergency action plan and discussed how to respond to a safety situation. All of these things are required by your ordinance. During operations, the project will have several safety mechanisms in place. For any reason, at any time, either our on-site staff or remote operations control center staff can isolate equipment and shut turbines down in a matter of seconds. Importantly, though, all turbines also have sensors and systems to automatically shut themselves down if needed. Having 3 redundant systems in place ensures for the safe operation of the project. The last topic I want to discuss is decommissioning. What happens to the turbines and equipment in 30 years? And who pays for it? These are really good questions, and I want to assure you that Coles Wind is responsible for decommissioning. Not the landowners, not the county, and not taxpayer dollars. There are 3 legally binding documents that confirm Coles Wind is responsible for decommissioning. our agreements with landowners, the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement with the Illinois Department of Agriculture, which has been provided to both landowners and is included in the application, and your wind ordinance. So you're protected in 3 ways: by every single lease, the agricultural agreement with the state, and your ordinance. So now that we've established that Coles Wind is responsible for decommissioning, the next question is, how will decommissioning be done? We've included in our application, in Appendix D1, a draft decommissioning plan. This plan has been prepared by engineers at Westwood Professional Services who are experts in decommissioning. They have certified this plan with the stamp of an Illinois licensed engineer. Your wind ordinance states that decommissioning shall comply with the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement. And so the decommissioning plan framework is based on that. So this includes how facilities will be removed, how the land will be restored to agricultural production, the timeline for decommissioning to be completed, and importantly, how much is this going to cost? Attachments A and B in the decommissioning plan in Appendix D1 are extremely detailed cost estimates, one for each turbine model. So each cost estimate goes through, line by line, the cost to disconnect, dismantle, haul, dispose, recycle every component and restore the land, down to the ton, cubic yard, or acre, and the cost for each. There are 3 conservative assumptions in this cost estimate. First, we've included a 15% contingency and county administrative fee as an added buffer. Second, we've reduced the salvage value of scrap metals so that if scrap metal prices are unusually high right now, we've accounted for this and thereby increased the overall decommissioning cost. And third, every line item has a cost, even for items where we've assumed that they can be recycled and save money. So why does this protect the county? Because these 3 conservative assumptions increase the overall decommissioning cost, which means that Coles Wind pays more money for the financial assurance to cover the cost, and it is therefore a protection for Coles County. So with these cost estimates, that leads to financial assurance that Coles Wind must have in place. Coles County is further protected from incurring decommissioning costs by this financial assurance. Included with our decommissioning plan and in compliance with Section 21D of the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement, Coles Wind has included a draft performance bond. A bond is a legal agreement where a separate company, known as a surety, guarantees that Coles Wind perform its decommissioning obligations for the benefit of Coles County. In exchange for this guarantee, Coles Wind pays the surety an annual premium. The entire purpose of such a decommissioning performance bond is to protect Coles County. It is designed, along with the decommissioning plan, to ensure that if something unexpected or unfortunate should happen to Coles Wind, Coles County can draw on the bond to ensure that decommissioning is completed without the county having to pay for it. So how does financial assurance work? In a hypothetical situation, let's imagine that Apex files for bankruptcy. The bond is a legal instrument. Coles County is protected by the surety company. Coles County will be listed as the beneficiary to the bond, and the county therefore has access to it. And furthermore, the landowners are listed as a secondary beneficiary. Let me say this a different way. If Apex files for bankruptcy, Coles County could go right to the surety company for the money to decommission the project. The surety company would then come after Apex without the county being involved. Coles County is not the middleman. In another hypothetical situation, even if Coles Wind stops paying the annual bond premiums, the bond is still controlled by the county. And that is directly stated on page 2 of the bond, and I've included it on the screen up here because it's really important. The non-payment of the premiums associated with this bond will not invalidate the bond, nor shall obligee, Coles County, be obligated for the payment thereof. The bond and its structure are consistent with the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement and provide certainty that this committee, the county board, and Coles County residents will not have to pay for decommissioning of this project at the end of its life. So the plan in our application, it's going to be updated several more times over the life of the project. We've provided a draft plan, cost estimate, and bond. But per your ordinance, we will continue to collaborate with you and update the decommissioning plan, cost estimate, and financial assurance that reflect the final site plan prior to applying for building permits. Together, these three documents are called the decommissioning agreement. And that will need to be approved by the county board prior to construction. From there, the decommissioning plan will be updated in year 10 of operations and every 5 years thereafter. These updates will capture any changes in things like scrap metal prices we discussed earlier, but also engineering techniques or the proximity of recycling centers. These plan updates are required by both your wind ordinance and the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement. Decommissioning is a really complex topic, so let me summarize the main points at 20,000 foot level. Coles Wind has 3 legally binding documents that say Coles Wind is responsible to decommission the project. Every landowner agreement, our agricultural agreement with the state, and your ordinance. We have a detailed decommissioning plan, cost estimate, and financial assurance. Those 3 documents come together and form a decommissioning agreement that will need to be approved by the county board prior to construction. The decommissioning agreement ensures that Coles County and its residents do not have to pay for decommissioning. So with that, hopefully I've made navigating the application binder and all the supporting studies a little easier, showed you the ways in which we've designed this project to meet your ordinance, and perhaps preemptively answered some of your questions as well. Coles Wind has collaborated with Coles County. Experts on this application are project landowners, and we look forward to a continued collaboration with the county on this project.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any additional direct examination of your witness, Ms. Antonioli?
No, not this time.
Okay, very good. All right, Ms. Anderson, you may step down. Questions for Ms. Anderson will take place at the beginning of the next session of this public hearing. All right, which brings us to, when is that going to be? Council, get out your calendars, and members of the committee. Because we can't do this without you, because you're the guys who are deciding and making the recommendation. Let's look at, and Mr. Lockhart. We'll need you here too. All right, let's look at this Wednesday, March 19th. Are you available?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Kite? Yes. Mr. Lockhart? Okay.
One
March?
point to make with Wednesday, can we start at 6 p.m.? Is there any objection to beginning an hour earlier?
There's one time conflict. Our court reporter can't be here till 6:30.
Okay, understood that.
So, and we definitely can't do it without Mrs. Atkinson. That's for
We
sure.
don't want to put Ms. Atkinson on the spot.
Okay. Gentlemen on the committee, how does this Wednesday, March 19th at 6:30 look for you? Everybody's good? I feel like I'm getting ready to put together a Rubik's Cube successfully. I've never done it before, but we've got March 19th at 6:30 p.m. All right. Now, I said I think we need 5 dates. All right. Then let's look at Monday, March 31st. It's my understanding, Council, that members of your team are not available during the week of March 24th. Is that correct? Okay, so let's go to March 31 and April 1. that Monday and Tuesday. Mr. Moore says no. Mr. Hess says no. All right? We will not be doing March 31 or April 1. All right, the following week, those are the only times I'm available because, folks, I'm in the middle of a public hearing that's going to have its 10th night tomorrow night in Livingston County, beautiful Pontiac, Illinois. So I'm not available the rest of that week. All right, then let's go to the following week, Tuesday, April 8, and Thursday, April 10.
County board meeting.
All week? The 8th won't work. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, Thursday, April 10. I'll start with you guys because you're indispensable. April 10. Mr. Dowdy. Okay, everybody. All right. Council, April 10.
We will make April 10th work.
Okay. Mr. Kite?
Yeah.
Mr. Lockhart? Thursday, April 10, we're on. Now, the following week is Holy Week.
Is that, sure, so is that at 6 p.m. or 6:30 on that?
On April 10th, I think, if it's all right with you folks, can we start at 6? Okay, all right.
I can't be here by 6.
Who can't be here by 6? Oh, Mr. Hartke? Oh my gosh.
6:30.
You're an indispensable party, Mr. Hartke.
We think so.
I think so too, and Mrs. Hartke probably thinks so too.
I'll bring it.
Yeah, we can go off the record. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Jamie, I'm not asking you. Are you
I'm available.
April or March 19th and April 10th? Okay. And April 10th, 6 o'clock.
But March 19th we're doing.
March 19th at 6:30. You're welcome. All right. The following week is Holy Week. There's some people have church on Wednesday night, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday. We're not going to have Friday night sessions. Is there any member of the committee who is staunchly against holding meetings during the week between Palm Sunday and Easter? Because I've literally had people come to me saying, I can't be there because of religious observations, and that's extremely important. Any of y'all?
No problem.
Okay. Monday, April 14, Tuesday, April 15, Wednesday, April 16, Thursday, April 17th. First members of the committee. Anything in that week, Monday through Thursday, the 14th through the 17th, not work? 15th does not work for Mr. Cox. Let's mark that off.
That's the county board. Second Tuesday of every month. I'm sorry.
Is the 15th okay? Okay. 14, 15, 16, 17. It all works?
17, 21st.
Okay. Not 17. Now, there is a provision that if you are not in attendance, you can view the transcript when it's available. Would that be okay with you, Mr. Dowdy? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so maybe the 17th is still in play. Okay. Mr. Friesland, are those dates okay with you? Chairman Watts, are those days okay with you? Okay, and I believe you gentlemen, Mr. Cox and Mr. Clayton, are okay with those. All right, return to council.
We can make that week work with one caveat. Ms. Anderson will be in a permit hearing in Colorado that week. I would hope we would be done with her by then.
We will.
So if it's acceptable to the commission and to Mr. Gaines that she's not here, the rest of us.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Hess.
We
Mr.
can go
Kite.
to Colorado.
Yeah. Mr. Kite?
That works.
That works. Mr. Lockhart? All right. 14, 15, 16, 17.
6:30 or 6?
Let's go with 6 o'clock if we could, please. All right, that gives us gives us 6 dates. I want to say one thing. I appreciate all of the questions from the public tonight. There are people who come up to me at these hearings all over the state and say, this is taking too long. And my response is, it has to. Because this is the only time the public has a chance to ask questions of witnesses and make statements and give testimony and present any evidence. Because this is the only public hearing that we're going to have in this. So I take it extremely seriously to let everybody have their questions. And I noticed for the first witness, Mr. Moore, there were, outside of the committee, there were 15 people who had questions. And I appreciate every one of those. I do want to let everyone know that underneath this speaker, there is a stack of business cards. They are of Kelly Lockhart. Mr. Lockhart is regional planning guru for the county. If you wish to submit a written comment, that's how you do it. I think he sent him an email. And, if you're not wanting to get up and talk in front of people, or if you're not going to be here, I don't anticipate public, other than asking questions, I don't anticipate witness testimony or public comment until probably later on in that week of April 14th. By the way, does anybody want me to reiterate the dates? Get them down, or do you all have it? Okay, great. Okay. Any final announcements, Ms. Antonioli, from your team? No. Okay. Mr. Kite, do you have anything further? No, sir. Mr. Lockhart, do you have anything further?
I will post the dates and times on our website.
Very good. Thank you. Members of the committee, do you have anything further? No, you can make that motion. I was just going to call for it, but Mr. Cox, you rank much more highly than I do, sir. I will say this, upon Mr. Cox's suggestion, I don't think it's going to even require a second. The board is, Mr. Cox,
that we're coming back here.
we're coming back to this room, even though it was crowded. So the board is, or the committee is in recess until Wednesday night, March 19th, 6:30 p.m. in this room, Courtroom 1 of the Coles County Courthouse at 651 Jackson Avenue, Charleston, Illinois. The committee is in recess until that time. Thank you, folks.
I just heard something.